Hey everybody, welcome to a new year. This is the end of the first week in January here in North Texas. And while in a lot of places around the country and even around the world, January isn't typically a time where you're going to be working in the garden. But here in North Texas, if we don't start, we're going to find ourselves behind when March and April hits and we're ready to do some serious gardening. So what are we going to do here? Well, you can see that it seems like an overcast day. We're finally getting some rain, but it's drizzly. We haven't had rain for months, it seems. Maybe a day or two, but nothing to really give you that soaking rain that the ground needs. You can see the temperature here. We're sitting at about 50 degrees Fahrenheit, which again isn't necessarily cold for a lot of folks, but I actually prefer working in this cooler weather because I know what's coming in the summer when it is 100+ degrees and you have to get out in the garden and weed and do other heavy activities. That's definitely not fun. But here you can really, get to business. So what are we going to be doing today? So for the garden here, the first things that we'll be able to start putting in shortly are potatoes, funny enough. The stores should start having the seed potatoes somewhere around the middle to the end of January. And so as you know, the potatoes go into the ground, underneath the ground, where they'll stay warm. Once the shoots start to come up, if it's still cold, then it could potentially damage the shoots and the plant as it grows up. But typically, we try to time that to where it will start to grow underground, and then by the time it starts to shoot up through the dirt, the freeze and the cold that would damage it has already passed. So I need to start preparing to get the raised beds that I'm going to do for the potatoes ready. So that way, when I see that the stores have the potatoes, I just go out, put them in the ground, and call it a day. So if you do a little bit each time, then that really helps, because now you're not rushing come spring and you're trying to put everything together and plant and do your seeds and stuff like that. So start now, do a little bit each weekend, and then that way you will be farther along. So let me show you exactly what we're going to be doing here. And remember, I've already started working, so if your shirt and your hands aren't dirty, then you ain't doing it right. So let's take a look at what's going on. Quick update. We had some weather that went below 30, went below freezing. So the Swiss chard and the lettuce took a freeze, took a hit. Nothing you can do. We got a couple weeks out of it, which was great, and we harvested and whatnot, but yeah, the cold got it. Parsley, so it's probably going to come back, but the other stuff, we'll see. There's some celery we put in there. Maybe this might come back up from the roots. I don't know. We'll find out. But the cold got it. But that doesn't mean that we can't start preparing here. Now, as you might know, we've always had these frames for growing vertically and tomatoes and stabilization. Now, what I'm going to do is, while everything behind here has been back to Eden gardening, mulch, wood chips, breaking down, things have grown really good in the ground. But it's more of a weed management issue that I have now. And it's one of the weeds get in between stuff, and it's hard to weed. It's hard to keep them down when things are growing. So I really like the convenience of the raised beds, because the raised beds can help me keep it easier weed free. I just have to make sure around the area, as you can see the grass around the edges here, I gotta trim up. But that means that I want to start doing some raised frames here. So the first thing I'm going to do is kind of rearranging my garden. So back here along the fence, you can see I've got this nice trellis built out of metal fencing. And I also moved the irrigation up and out of my way here so I don't damage anything. Now, what I want to do here, as I'm learning, is I'm going to have some raised beds go down here about 16 feet, because each board is about 8 feet in length. And what I'm going to do is have it 2 feet wide. 2 feet wide for somebody with my arms. I'll be able to get to the back without straining and having issues of getting behind stuff. So when I have a barrier, a wall like this, I need to get sometimes to the wall. So 3 feet is typically what you hear for raised beds, but because I can't get behind this technically, 2 feet is what we're going to do. And so what I'm doing here right now is I have a little rototiller, and I'm kind of digging up and trying to get a flat foundation for my raised bed, because this starts to dip going back behind the fence. So I'm going to try to even it up a little bit so I'm at least fairly level. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just fairly level. Now, why I like this trellis back here is because I can, when it's time to do sweet potatoes, I'm going to put potatoes back here for the regular white and red potatoes. And then come May, I'm going to put sweet potatoes. And sweet potatoes love those vines, and the vines would go all the way out that way. But in the past, I've trained the vines on that back fence to go up over the fence. Well, this is going to be really better for me, because with the 2 foot, I'll be able to get at them better. The vines can trellis up here and go back over the other side. We have a park on the other side, so there's nobody back there that we're gonna, bother with their garden. So it's gonna be really good, because this gets a lot of sun. This area here gets all day sun that sweet potatoes like. So having the vines come up and go over, they act like a solar panel, and hopefully that means better sweet potatoes for me. Back behind the fence there with the blackberries and other things, it's getting too cramped. I can't manage all the foliage and everything that gets back there. So a better thing would have it along this fence, because it's good sun. Raised beds are going to have good dirt and so forth. So what I'm going to do next here is I'm going to even this out a little bit with my rake. And then to help with the weed management, I'm going to put down my cardboard, as you can see here. Save your Amazon cardboard boxes or any of your Amazon purchases or anything that comes in a big box, because you're just going to lay that down at some time in the future and give your garden a good start for weed management and whatnot. And so let's start to even this out, and we'll show you our next steps. Okay, everybody, here's the next steps. I want to show you what I got so far. Now, you can see that I have the cardboard laid out over the dirt. That's going to keep the weeds down. That's going to help keep it clean as much longer than if not. I've also got the wood and the frames. Now let me show you kind of in detail what I got going on here. Now, first of all, this stuff, first of all, I'll show you what I used to do before. And maybe you've done it, you see lots of videos of it. When you're making raised beds, how do you keep the thing together? You have to come over here and drill screws, maybe some brackets, and it's a lot of extra work. Not that it's difficult, but it's more involved, more tools needed. Going forward, this is how I've been doing things, and it's the best thing in gardening, I think. Look at this. These are, I guess they're almost like square cinder blocks in a way, but they're not cinder blocks because they have 4 grooves on each side. They also have this hole here, like you could put rebar if you had a stack of these to keep them extra secure, but I don't need that, it's not that tall. But these grooves fit perfectly your wooden 2x4s that you're going to get at Home Depot or whatever store you shop at. Now, the wood I have here is actually 8 feet long in length, which is great, and it is 10 inches wide, which is great because if I'm doing root vegetables, carrots, potatoes, whatever, that's a great depth. I like doing 10 inches, maybe 12. That's a bit overkill, but 10 inches is great because you'll still have the dirt underneath to go down deeper if the things need it. But this wood fits just like, it's kind of like a gardening Legos. I don't need screws. I don't need a drill. I don't need brackets. I don't need anything other than cut the wood and then slide it in the grooves. And those things are secure. Ain't going nowhere. Now, it's a terrific setup because one person can knock out these beds easily because it doesn't take much effort. Now, with the wood, you'll notice that the wood's kind of a green color. What I like to use is pressure-treated lumber. Now, some of you might say, oh, you're going to poison yourself. It's not like they used to do it. A long time ago, pressure-treated wood was used with chemicals, arsenic, other things that, if it leaches into the dirt, and the vegetables get a hold of it, theoretically you might be poisoning yourself long term. But these days, pressure treated wood is made with copper. That's why it's green. And so with the copper, you're not going to poison yourself. It's safe to use around food. Now, the other great thing about this is, let's say one of these pieces of wood go bad. Maybe it cracks, maybe you got a bad piece, whatever. Anything could happen once you start to get it in the environment. All you have to do is simply slide these out, slide another piece in. Easy, easy, easy. So for all my gardening going forward, I'm using these blocks. Now, what we have to do next is simply lay it out like we've done. You want to get as level as you can. Now, granted, there's a slope here, and I can't, do too much about that. I've leveled it out as much as I can. There's still going to be movement as the ground expands with moisture and whatnot, but it's good enough, right? I'm not trying to put a house on top of this. It's just garden beds. So, it's good enough, and nothing harmful is going to happen because it's not perfectly symmetry. But the next steps here is to fill this with dirt. So what I have to do is calculate my volume that I'm going to need, right? I like to put a combination of garden soil, maybe a little topsoil, peat moss, or any sort of peat moss substitute, coconut coir, but something that will retain and hold the moisture. Otherwise, this stuff can get really dry, especially in North Texas when it gets hot. You need something that when you put the water in, it's going to retain it a little bit more. And maybe even some vermiculite or something to keep it nice and airy. Throw in your organic material, your matter, your compost, coffee grounds, anything to get these beds going, right? So it's really a great setup, and the next stop, we didn't have enough room in the car. If you have a car, you have to make a couple trips. But this fit all in the car if you put the back seat down. The cost of this, right? So altogether, this is 16 feet long and 2 feet wide. And like I say, when I stand at the edge here and I need to get over to the fence, see, I can get back there with little effort of falling over or straining myself. So 2 foot wide is perfect for this back fence area. This whole setup costs $100, which isn't too bad. So that's 8 feet by 10 inches boards and 12 of the blocks. The blocks were about, rounding up, $3 each, and I got 12 of those, and I got 5 of the boards. So altogether, $100 at Home Depot. If you had a coupon like we did, you might use something like that. But yeah, so far so good here on setting this up. Now, just to give you an idea of the future where we're going, as we have these frames here, I again want to use this same setup. Cucumbers, beans, snap peas, all those kind of things that like to grow up. Of course, I won't need a 2 foot wide frame. They're growing up. The roots are going down. They don't need a lot of area to spread. So what I'm going to do is probably get 1 foot wide, and I'll do the same thing, 8 feet long rows. But I won't need 10 inches here. That's too deep. Since these things are growing up, the roots are going to go down as far as they go. I can save a few bucks and get like 8 inches high. That'll be perfect. And then the stones. So because it's January, and in Texas, why I'm doing this first is because potatoes will need to be put in fairly soon. Usually about the middle or towards the end of January, the gardening store will have potatoes. And you get them in because you start harvesting potatoes before it gets hot here in Texas. So that means maybe April, right there at May, we'll take out the white, red, the normal potatoes. But by May, sweet potatoes, just like you've seen me do every year, will go into this dirt instead. And then I got the frame and everything good. Now, once I got this all set up, I'll put the irrigation back down. I'll probably modify it a little bit to, I've been doing the rotors, and I know some people do drip irrigation and it's great, but again, in this Texas heat, I need to hit that and soak it with a good deep soaking with the area rotors there. It just does a better soaking. The drip, I mean, it's fine. There's pros and cons of everything, but just kind of what I'm learning, it gives it a nice rain-like soaking. So we'll put those back down and probably have to, put them in a different area because it may not fit where it did before. As you can see, I just had them in between the frames, and so I want to, course them through a little bit smarter. I still have some extra frames here. These were little scrap woods that I made, little squares. I'm going to put them somewhere strategically, kind of like where this one is. Here's the raspberries, which they are ready. You can see nice raspberry stalks there. But again, I got to get them away from this fence. They're going to go here. So I'm going to do cutting and taking them down by the root here while it's winter and getting them established so that, again, by the spring, they're going to move up. So, there's lots of stuff to do in the backyard gardening. These trees, the fruit trees, I've had in containers, and they've been growing, but they're too young to produce fruit just yet. Now, what you'll notice here is some gaps are missing. So one of the things that we had here, we had 3 trees that were decorative flowering trees, and they're great. They gave some shade, but you know what? There's that old adage that I have is like, I can't eat a flower. I want to grow something that will give me fruits and vegetables. So I'm going to transplant the trees where the old trees were. The mulberry tree here is just beautiful. I mean, it grows so fast, and I really need to trim some of those tall branches up there. They're getting high. But I'm going to instead get those out of the way and put them here in the ground permanently and give them a nice starting point, and I think they'll be just fine. The fig tree, again, some of the old figs that didn't ripen, it got too cold and that was it. But I'm going to trim the trees, and that's an apricot tree too here. So I need to trim that a little bit as well so that you can reach the top branches. I like it when it's more of a miniature rather than a huge giant tree that you can't get to. So might have to get up on the ladder there and do a little trimming. All right, but anyways, back to the raised beds here that I'm putting down. I'm going to do a quick math and calculate the cubic square feet, get some dirt, and then we will take the next steps. We'll show you more. All right, talk to you again. Okay, so what I've done is put in the bags of dirt along with the peat moss, and you can see that it's ready to be mixed up. I got an extra bag of peat moss here. I think this is enough dirt to start me off. The dirt's going to settle a little bit as I start to mix it up. Probably I'll put another bag or two of dirt to top it off, but we'll see. What I'm going to do now, and you might want to get yourself something like this, is to mix up the dirt. Something like this here. This is a rototiller. Now there's all sorts of different shapes and sizes. This one's battery operated, and it has the tines here. So let me see if I can do this one-handed. Maybe I can, maybe I can't. All right, let's see. So there we go. So you can see that as I get the different types of soil in here, rather than do this by hand, you get yourself a little tool like this, right? And you'll do a good job in terms of mixing up the dirt and the peat moss and anything else. And what I could do too is if I put in some fertilizer closer to when I'm ready to plant, or I want to put in some more organic material, some compost, then that's going to be a good thing, and you don't have to get there with your shovel and do that kind of stuff. So let me finish off these 2 beds and then we'll finish up. Okay, so we used the rototiller, mixed up the dirt. I kind of raked it smooth, and you could see that we don't come right up to the top of the bed. Now this is going to probably settle a little bit too, because it's going to compact like anything once it starts to rest and get wet. So what I'll probably do, I still have this extra bag of peat moss, and then like I say, I'll probably want to put in a little bit more organic manner, a little bit more compost when it's closer to being ready to plant. So that's going to mix it up a little bit more, get more nutrients and fertilizer and that into the soil. I also will cover this up with some mulch, because that's going to retain the moisture that gets in there. It also keep the bed a little bit warm when it's colder, and that way, you know, we'll be ready to go. So altogether, when we're looking at this, you know, about $100 for material for the beds. For the dirt, it's probably gonna, it's about $100 what I put in there so far. It might be another, you know, $30 or $40 worth of additional fertilizer and organic matter that I'll top it off with and finish it up. But anyways, that's good. You know, that's one little project down. Like I say, the next projects are going to be taking care of these 3 rows and doing something similar concept wise with the raised beds. That way we get it up off the ground, away from the weeds. We'll have an easier way of watering, and it's really as much about organization and upkeep as it is about anything else. And then these beds here, you know, will be ready to go for them. So you do a little bit each weekend, and then when it comes time to really put things in the ground, you're going to be ready to go. So until we talk again, you guys all have a good day, and thank you very much for watching our videos. Bye-bye.